can stop their wombo combo for the turn, they can easily still just put themselves in a good position. And it's like the whole deck building around aspect and the whole of just playing that format, it just wasn't good.
Okay, anyway, I guess we can probably start now. So
Yep.
let's incorporate this into the discussion later on. I guess I'll start now. So here we are today with some bunch of scrubs from the UK, and today we're going to be discussing, does the format suck? Where we are at now today, 7th of March 2016. Ban list probably 2 or 3 weeks away. But for the situation we are in now, between the dates of, I don't know, sometime mid-February with the adjusted list to where we are now, going to pose the question, and if anyone in chat wants to join in and ask questions as we go along, please do feel free. I'll read them out as we go along. So let's just begin. Let's dive right into the deep end. So I'll start with Tom, since he's controversial that way. Tom, does this format suck?
Yeah, no. There's no sugarcoating it. The format does definitely suck. There's
Would you like to tell us
just
why?
nothing. There's just nothing that's like super. When I mean super fun, I don't mean like how everyone else means it. Like, oh, I want to have fun when I'm playing with you. Like, that's not how I think of it. But like, there's just no like deck that really appeals to me, and it's literally like.
Okay, so to you personally, like, it's not fun, but I mean, like, objectively, do you think the format is, like, you know, degenerate, bad, unhealthy, whatever term you want to use? Like, not just from, like, a personal preference of how you, like, enjoy certain decks mechanics, but objectively, do you think the format's bad, you know?
I mean, I feel that you have massive problems which make it unhealthy in the fact that every single deck has some quite big problems, and it's not like every single in this format you can get away with those problems, because the reason why these decks have problems is because you're trading in the consistency for the power level. So while you're trying to recuperate into the game, you're just outright getting dominated by even, say, Monarchs, which is one of the most fairer decks, because it just relies on its normal summon heavily. It still just ruins you because it has a card that gets a 2800 that special summons another 2800 from deck, and that can literally just kill you in 2 turns. And so it's very worrying in that sense. And as Jerry's posted in the chat, there are a lot of awful cards in the format that then progress to make all these matchups even more even more of the games ruined because you draw these cards and your opponent doesn't draw these cards.
Jack, so does the format suck, Jack?
Yeah, nothing really changed there. Yeah, I think it sucks quite a lot. Like, I can go into like the big sides of the competitive analysis. The fact that none of the mirror matches are that great, except Monarchs, which is quite skillful, but like Pendulum and Cosmo mirror matches are pretty awful. And
do you really think the thingy mirror match is that bad? The Draco Pow Pendulum mirror matches? I've honestly been kind of enjoying it.
Like, if you go first, there is a chance you can just set up a board of like Nightmare and Rafflesia that's going to be hard to get out of unless you have like a Wavering Eyes or something. But like, my bigger point on this is just the fact that like, this is one of the only times in recent memory of playing this game I have just really not enjoyed playing Yu-Gi-Oh. Like, I'd look forward to going to locals like in the past, but like for the Yu-Gi-Oh aspect, whereas now it's just like.
What do you think it is? Like, why do you think that's the case?
What, sorry?
Like, why do you think that's the case? Like, is it really the format, or do you think maybe, I don't know, like, it's just an age thing or something? Like,
no, I think it's definitely. I think it's a combination of the fact that the format's not very fun or skillable. Like,
It's not.
Usually, having one of those is enough to like sustain the fun, like the enjoyability of Yu-Gi-Oh. But we have neither right now.
the thing is, though, like, what's a fun format if it's not skillful? You know what I mean? Like, you said one or the other. Like, how do you really get a fun format if it's not skillful?
Yeah, I guess that's like. Give me a second to try and think of one.
Because like the way I see it is like if the game's fun, it means it's quite skillful. Like I don't see how you can have a fun format but there being no skill. That just sounds like complete AIDS to me.
No, that's a fair comment. Obviously, I'm not saying there could be a skillless format that's fun, but there's some formats that are less skillful than others, but are still fun. Like, so for example, the Necros mirror match was like a really skillful format that probably, like, I would say I had more fun playing hat format.
Oh, totally.
Even though
Yeah.
that's skillful.
Jerry, what do you think? You can be honest. You don't need to like be objective if you don't want to.
I will. Essentially, this format sucks because I've posted about this in Duelist Kingdom earlier today. Like, it doesn't reward good players. It doesn't promote good plays. It promotes luck more than anything else. Because you can build, like, any deck. Most of the decks will have inconsistencies. There's auto-win cards. The mirror matches are really bad. For example, Cosmo Dark Destroyer is one of those cards. Like, it just limits deck design. Because if you're talking about innovation and stuff, any card that says it targets can't be used now. So the whole format, like, that's one of the major pillars that are ruining the format because you can't play targeting cards. And then you have stuff like Wavering Eyes, which is like when you make Ignister and stuff, like in a Pendulum deck, you have to deal with Wavering Eyes now, which is also not fair. But if you're playing a Pendulum deck, you have to deal with Domain, and you can't play under that, which is also not fair. So there's just like all these things, and no deck is just so overpowered that the others are better. And you could argue that it's diverse, but diversity doesn't matter when the format is just so luck-based. Because you could spend like 80 hours, like Hoban or something like that, just training yourself and playing games endlessly. But at the end of the day, if your opponent opens like Strike, Tin Can, Call the Hunted, like, and they're going first, you have nothing you can do about that. Like, no matter how you build your deck, you can't blame yourself. You just blame the fact that they open better than you. And like, usually you want to reward the better player, people with more experience. But this isn't a format where you get rewarded for that.
It's all very bleak. Then, is there any positive factors in this format? At least, is there anything like that's good?
Well,
It'll be over soon.
Like, can I say something? Like, first, I think, like, the benefit is you can play one of the 3 different top decks and still do well in a tournament. Like, that's one of the benefits if you want to, like, be a budget player or whatever, spend less money. I think that's what Konami's going for, like, so anyone can afford to play the game now, and anyone could do well with luck in a tournament. Like, that's one of the benefits, but other than that, you still have to play one of the top 3 decks. Like, you could play something roguish, like Phantom Knights or whatever, but I've talked about how Domain just screws over so many decks, and how Cosmo Destroyer and targeting issues. So, like, you're still limited on the deck choices. Like, it sounds like you can play any deck, but you really can't. You have to play one of the top 3 decks.
Yeah. So, Jack, you wanted to say something. Is there any like redeeming factors?
It was more of a joke answer because I said it'll probably be over soon. But yeah, I mean, I guess the fact that there is some diversity is an upside. Like, you have a choice to pick the deck that you hate the least. It's something, consolidation prize and all that.
Yeah. So, for me personally, I think that this format has been, it's like, I just like diverse formats in general. So this is, you know, that's always going to be a bit of a bigger pull factor for me. But like Jerry said, like, sometimes you just open like so broken that you can't lose, and then sometimes you just open so badly that you can lose to like a structure deck. Looking at Duncan's Prague performance, so it's like, it's really hit or miss. Sometimes I've had some of the most amazing, most fun games I've had in my life this format, like playing against Duncan with Phantom Knights versus Monarchs. Like, some of that has just been so fun, and then there's been other games where I've just like sat like looking at Domain or staring down a Dark Destroyer, wondering like, what the fuck's going on with my life? You know what I mean? So, Tom, do you want to say something fucking crazy?
What about what's good about the deck? Well, what's good about the format?
Yeah.
I like some of the cards that we can play. Like, I think since I claimed that since I quit,
Since I claimed that I
didn't
quit.
get no, since I quit,
You don't quit. You just
shut up. I didn't get to play in the magician one, so I guess like some of the card choices that I get to do and stuff, they're kind of neat. Like I have a bit of fun playing with the stuff, so I do enjoy that. But as a whole, it's just not as fun. I guess it's just because like I'm still hot on playing Metal, and I love that.
So, Brad, you just joined us. Do you want to tell us, like,
Hello.
do you think the format sucks?
Yeah, so bad.
I don't know what you expected out of this discussion, Nadia. I really don't. Like,
There's very little argument for the contrary, really, isn't there? I mean, every time somebody tries to argue against it, they just say like, "Oh, it's quite versatile, isn't it?" And it's like, that's not really the point, though, is it? It's just shit.
I think one thing that to note is, as a whole, Yu-Gi-Oh players like to complain, and this isn't like one of the worst formats. Like I wouldn't say this is like a 1 or a 2 in format in the scale for formats, but like it's not a great one. But I wouldn't say it's like a completely awful one that I've played in. So I guess that is one thing. Like we could easily, like after the ban list, it could be a much worse format, and then we will be like, oh.
Like, you know how you said Yu-Gi-Oh players in general like to complain? Like, I think from competitive standpoint, like, none of us were complaining about past formats or whatever. Like, this is one of the actual formats that we don't vocally say we complain, like, but we all know it. Like, we think it. So it's not something we just want to complain about. Because when asked, we complain.
Oh, no,
but
I agree.
when not asked, we don't.
But what I'm saying is, like, I'm not talking about us. I'm saying just from a standpoint of the average Yu-Gi-Oh player. The heavy proportion, basically all the ones that suck, constantly complaining about something.
Well, that's one of the reasons why this adjusted list probably has happened, I guess, is like, well, that's what, actually, never mind, because that's what Adrian Fox told me, and like, that's like me getting the shitty Konami answer as opposed to what the real answer was. Like, he told me that they got a load of feedback, which is obviously not true, because they never really listened to, like, the complaints of a few casual players. But he told me that like they were getting complaints like, "Oh, at my locals, all they see is this Pepe deck, and they don't want to play the game if this is all they're gonna see." So apparently that's why they created the adjusted list. But yeah, like there's no place to get wrong.
The deck's been out for like 2 weeks. You can't complain about that so early. Like people haven't got bored of it yet.
I still like. I honestly don't know. Like still to this day, I can't wrap my head around and figure out what Konami's like logic was with the ban list after 2 weeks. Like I don't know like what they were trying to do. Like were they really? I know they weren't trying to balance the format because they've never done that before with Dragon Rulers and Necros. They clearly like like profit is one thing, but then again it's like why does it matter if the format becomes tier 0? Like I just don't understand what they were going for with this adjusted list. Like I just call me like a cynic or whatever, but I don't believe Konami were actually going for balance.
No,
we will probably never know the answer to that question, realistically.
What is it then?
They were basically trying to sell their Monarch structure deck.
It's that and Infinite Gold. So like, if they go ahead and make a format where like, if they make it's just an additional reason, really, isn't it? I mean, like. If they make Cosmo more of a viable deck choice, and then they go ahead and make decks like Cosmo, which could be very well a strong deck in this format. If they make that more accessible, then it goes ahead and sells the Infinite Gold a lot more, doesn't it?
But the thing is, Bosch is still like in circulation, so there was no reason for them not to like keep Bosch around for like at least a month before they ban it. Like the instant that hits, everyone's gonna go for Infinite Gold then, because they're like, oh, Cosmo's the best deck now, so then they sell it better instead of hitting it like a month and more in advance.
One of the main reasons to sum up why this format is bad is because like is simply because like I don't think there's any like good. The only deck that really has like a good matchup against something is like Monarchs has a good matchup against Cosmo, and then like, but then from the mirror match perspective, every mirror match is total aids.
Yep.
So like Necros
like-
is a skilled mirror match.
But people say Monarch is a skilled mirror match. Like, I agree, but the problem is, in a tournament setting, it's not a skilled mirror match, because every single game goes to time. Like, it annoys me so much, the fact that, like, just, you have one tribute summon, at most two, every turn, and you can still take 35 minutes, and, like, basically, like, 4 minutes per turn, thinking about what you want to do next.
Yeah. It's
And then you go into time, and then you draw, and then everything's horrible.
And then you draw.
yeah, my friend my friend Kaz tied against Marcelo Barbary in the last round of Swiss because they were playing a Monarch mirror, and they were going to try and roll for it, but they were surrounded by judges. So
Yeah, that's the worst part. Like, there's nothing you can do. Like, you don't even want to draw. Like, these things aren't like, this format's one of those like non-intentional draw formats, and you still like just get screwed over by the fact that you keep drawing with other monarchs.
Well, just play Mask or Restrict, then you don't have to think.
You still have to draw.
I
it,
did
though.
that, and I still lost.
You have to draw it.
Yeah. So I guess what follow-up question would be like, how do you like fix this situation, really?
I've already mentioned
Wait,
this.
that's-
Easiest fix: Dark Destroyer to 1 or to 0, because non-targeting is like the worst thing you could have in this game, and then Wavering Eyes to 0, and then Domain to like 0 or 1 at most, and then it's solved.
Are you actually serious about that? Like, surely, like, Dark Destroyer to 1 just, like, kills that deck.
No. Well, Dark Destroyer to 1 means like they could sell new support. You'd be running like Eclipser, which searches instead of floating. And like, I get it, but like, targeting is just so broken right now. Like, if you can't target, there's so many things you can't do in this game. Especially like next format, when that Ghost Cherry Blossom thing comes out, you summon a Dark Destroyer, you discard a Cherry Blossom and target Ignister, like, you just lose.
Yeah.
Like,
I think that's
it
taken
limits,
into consideration.
it limits so much of their deck, like, in creationism, like, innovation that Konami is like so famous for. They're like, oh yeah, we like to be innovative. But that's not true at all, because with Dark Destroyer, like, so many cards can't be played. Like, that card alone is ruining the format a lot. So, like, if you free up the format just a little bit, like, it's slightly better now.
And what other hits did you say? So DD to 1 and what else?
Wavering, and then, aside from Wavering, you also want to hit Domain.
Wavering Band, right?
Yeah, then Wavering.
Okay, just making sure.
Well, I think E-Tele needs to be hit.
Well, if you hit Dark Destroyer, like, it doesn't really need to be hit that much, because like, you can't do that really cheap thing where you do Farm Girl and then get a Dark Destroyer and then pop your stuff and then go for OTK. Like, it kind of solves it a bit.
It does. Yeah, but it only mitigates it so much. Like, but E-Tele is still a 3 could still have, create a lot of issues. Like,
Like-
because like summoning a tin can, like, obviously it would make the deck more fragile and more susceptible to stuff like Veiler, because obviously most Cosmo players within the early game are like banking on a tin can resolving. So I guess that's what E-Tele kind of solves. But I don't know. I just think that like that card, like, if you're able to like circulate your Dark Destroyer well enough, I still think that E-Tele is kind of degenerate.
Well, no, but that means at least it makes the deck like slightly better in the sense that you have to know what you're doing then, because you can't just like brainlessly open E-Tele Dark Destroyer and just win the game. It doesn't work that way anymore, because you have one Dark Destroyer. It's real, like, you can only pop like a Forerunner or something like that, and then tin can searches are significantly worse as well. Like, a lot of the targets you get aren't like really good. Like, Dark Destroyer is probably the best card you can add to your hand off a tin can.
Yeah.
The thing is, like, if you put Dark Destroyer, if you put E-Tele to 1, it just becomes a complete aid sack card.
It's not.
Yeah,
It's not.
they do that.
What does it do? Like, it has to do. It doesn't do enough anymore, because there's not much you can search now.
Unfortunately, as
remember-
much as I agree with that statement, as it turns into a Saki card, it's not necessarily the first time they've done it. They've done it with stuff like Soul Charge and shit like that, for instance. And
But the difference is, it's just not as sacky like E-Tele, because if you can imagine, like, before, like back in December when we still had like Dimension of Chaos. We still have 3 Telly. We have 3 Dark. We had everything except Tin Can back then. It was fine. Like E-Telly was still, it was fine then. And there's no
Yeah.
reason it's not now.
I mean,
Yeah.
so
They really can't compromise with it either because like they can't put like Dark Destroyer to 2 and E-Telly to 2 because then you still have like these potentially explosive plays. Like they have to actually go all out on one card.
Yeah, no, I
So
agree
one
that
also.
E-Telly is like pretty broken. It's like used across so many decks. Like if you hit it, that's cool. But like Dark
Yeah.
Destroyer is a that's limiting card design right now. It's limiting innovation. It's limiting what Konami's like want. It's their ideals. Like it's going against everything they stand for, basically.
Yeah.
So, ARG just happened. We had the Power Ranger deck topping. Thoughts on Power Rangers?
Oh. Can I just quickly interject and say, like, I've never, like, I've watched the interviews, and there's a way to go about, you know, composing yourself and shit like that, but I've just watched him, like, Calvin Tahan, just literally just shit talk, effectively. And it was so annoying, it was so irritating. To prove that he's the best in the world, go write a fucking book then. You know, Jesus. Or, you know, it was so hard to listen to.
I mean, you know,
About how
Calvin
he
is like
wants
he's like a meme, you know, like that's like his
Calvin's been
persona.
doing that since the beginning.
What, Tom?
Calvin's been doing that since the beginning. It's not a new facade or something. He's literally been doing that ever since he has been on Duelist grounds.
Yeah, like Calvin's like just made himself into a meme. I don't think it's serious.
Did he actually quit, or is it just a joke?
No, he's quit.
Oh, he actually has quit. Did you not hear him on stream, like pouring his heart out, like saying like all this stuff about?
Well, it's so hard to tell if he's trolling sometimes.
Yeah. Well, anyway, so he talked with Power Rangers. What do you guys think of that deck? Is that contender? Is that real? Is that a thing?
Well, all I know is that the white one's apparently really, really good.
You
The white one.
Getting that consistent. He was saying in the interview that it was 87% open boss guy. And I was doing test times and I think I was at like 20% open the boss guy.
I have no idea what you just said.
Yeah, Duncan, you're
Yeah,
super
your
quiet.
Mike's
20% chance of the big guy happening. I got that.
I heard that. Like the deck completely sucks. Honestly, the deck is.
They were saying on the interview that it's 87% to open the big boss guy. And I was doing test times with it and I think I was getting somewhere around 20% to open the boss.
I really don't think it's that consistent to get it. Like even Elliot's been running that, and he doesn't agree that it happens.
And Elliot has a more consistent build than Calvin because he's not playing traps. Like Calvin was playing 4 solemns.
Yeah, it's weird.
Oh,
'Cause, like,
shit.
it's weird how he's able to, because he made it sound like it's statistically like proven that like even if he goes second, he can establish a really strong board as well. So, and it's just weird how he's been able to do it. It's not even just the fact that he topped with the deck. It's the fact that he won, and then he's like saying like, yeah, I 2-0'd this or I 2-0'd that, and he's saying like, oh I did have a struggle with, I think it was what matchup? Was it Cosmo that he struggled with? And he said like, oh, I struggled with this matchup, but I still won anyway. And it's like, it's just weird. You can't see it happening because that deck seems really crap.
Honestly, like
Well,
I've seen like Elliot do his test hands and stuff like that. I honestly think the deck sucks. Like sure it can occasionally you'll like auto win with it, but like it's so bad.
Like I think the Towers card, the Quantum, the Megazord guy, like he's really
Yeah.
broke. He's really powerful. He's just like Towers, but he comes out so infrequently. Like it's hard to make a consistent build if you don't open like Soul Charge every game. It's really hard for you to make it.
Yeah.
What were they saying what one of you guys was saying in the chat that apparently like, because I didn't watch the coverage, but like apparently he opened like busted like every game.
Oh yeah, like
Like-
on stream he must have opened Soul Charge like about 75% of the time or something. It was ridiculous. It was actually insane. Oh my god, this guy just dartled my 1 luster. Okay.
Oh my god.
So anyway, I think that the deck honestly and like it just sucks completely. Like it's so bad.
Oh yeah.
So I don't know. I don't see that being a contender. Is there anything else? Like, I mean, we've seen a couple of Phantom Knights in the regionals topping and stuff. They've won even a few regionals. But I don't know. Is that enough to like make the format a little bit fun or whatever? Like, I guess not, because the fact that the format is dominated by like a couple of decks, like Draco Pals, Performa Pal, Cosmo, and Monarchs, and it's like they're the heavyweights of the format. And they're just boring, you know.
I can summarize like why every deck sucks. Like basically, no, not sucks, but you don't want to play against them or play it. Basically, Cosmo's like, you can't target me, and then like it prevents you from. It says your opponent can't do something. Is essentially what it says. And then Monarchs like is the same. It's like your opponent can't use the extra deck. Like every deck is saying you can't do something, you can't do something. None of them say I can do something.
Yeah.
Like Pendulum's probably the only deck that says I can do something, but the way it's played now is more of like, oh yeah, here's my giant hand, here's my nappies, like here's all the stuff that locks you down and says you can't. So like again, it's one of those like all three top decks basically say your opponent can't do something, so you're not actually having fun playing any of them.
Yeah, and it's also the fact that like the Draco Pal builds that we see today, a lot of them are playing Ariadne more often. Especially the more successful builds we saw at Prague, they were all playing Ariadne. So the challenge doesn't simply come from like trying to break a board; it's trying to play through like potentially 2 to 3 counter traps on top of it.
Yeah.
With incredibly limited decks as well, like Cosmo can't afford to get striked. So that's why the deck sucks going second.
So I guess moving on to like solutions. I mean, the ban list is one way to do it, but like I don't know, like do we need a new archetype somewhere down the line? Is there anything in Shining Victories you guys have kept an eye on?
I think
you've seen the Blue Eyes deck.
Yeah, that thing is so garbage. Unless you're playing Phantom Knights, because for some reason Konami thought it would be funny to make a themed Soul Drain. Out of all things that were relevant, they made a Soul Drain. But okay.
The Shining Victories gives us Rector Pendulum, which allows the somewhat handicapped Pendulum deck to develop, I guess. It definitely makes Draco Face Off limit worthy, if not ban worthy, because like before, Face Off was quite a coin flip in the fact that you were kind of aiming for Luster, if not and if you're aiming for like Luster, but like now with Draco Face Off, you're literally just deciding whether or not you want a high scale or a low scale. So that card is probably going to get limited, if not banned. But yeah, for now, it just means that the deck can develop and gets a bit better. So it probably won't lose as much to like Cosmo or Monarch, I guess. But it'll make the mirror aids as well, again, because Rector and Vector Pendulum are absolutely just stupid.
What does Rector do again?
Rector negates the effects of pendulum monsters. When it's a scale, it negates the effects of your opponent's pendulum monsters, so they can't like resolve a sorcerer or a Skull Crowbar Joker.
Can you still resolve keyboard? Yeah.
Yeah, but then that's what Vector's for. Vector just says no to that. Vector says no to give.
Okay, so just put both up and like have fun.
So imagine, it's a board of like Vector, Rector, and potentially like Dynastor. Just means that you more or less win, I guess.
For me personally, I'd like to see Dark Destroyer to 1, Domain banned, and Face Off banned. I think that would bring the decks down a little bit more. I don't think it fixes the sack factor. I don't think it like makes the format. It could make the format a little bit better. I don't know. What do you guys think of those suggestions? Like Face Off is
I feel
nuts.
about Domain being banned.
I
don't know if I think Domain being banned is like one of the okay. I actually think that if they ban Domain, Monarch dies. The deck's already quite inconsistent, or like it's like a bit brickish as it is. You go ahead and ban something like Domain, and the deck struggles to actually even more.
Someone's echoing. Jerry, that's you. Fix your echo. Well, the thing about Domain is that it's like the floodgate. You just can't play,
Yeah, themed floodgate.
Yeah, like we needed more of those,
Floodgate Another good effect as well.
Yeah.
Very good effect.
It'll just kill monarchs as a deck, though. I think
Do you think so?
as a contender, as a
Suck anyway. The consistency in that deck is just like it's not awful, but it's pretty awful. Like in the sense that when you brick, you actually just can't play.
yeah. But that's what I mean. Like you go ahead and take something out that somewhat aids in what the deck wants to do. If you can't, because like the deck can't really perform unless it really like resolves like an Erebus or an Aether. So if you hinder the chances of like pulling that off, then the deck just gets even worse. So. But yeah, it being a floodgate is like retarded. But that's why people are playing Archfiend-centric now.
Yeah. What do you think about Instant Fusion and Norden being at 3? I mean, Norden is another card I'd like to see banned, I'm not gonna lie.
I really don't think like any of them are doing much right now. Like in theory, it's a card that should be banned, and it sounds like a card that would be abused like so much. But at the moment, it's just it's not doing it. It's not doing much. I don't know why.
Yeah, as soon as like
one of the best decks really support it. Monarchs for obvious reasons. Cosmo, it's pretty subpar in. I mean, unless you run Ghost Ogre, but then you've got bigger problems if you're running Ghost Ogre. And yeah, it's only really pendulums which have to do something to be able to use it, since their cards don't go to grave unless it's Prague rules.
Way.
Hey, Lamau.
Yeah, but like, I think that like when if they create a new archetype that obviously was kind of in the same vein as a pendulum deck, you know, and then there probably will be at some point down the line where Instant Fusion probably is more exploitable, and then it's ban worthy. But at the moment, there's no grounds for it to be banned because there's nothing out there that can abuse it. So at the moment, it's not really ban worthy. I mean, like the best.
That's not ban worthy, Brad.
Instant Fusion or Norden, because at the moment the best pendulum decks are just like the ones that are using Ignister and Dynastar. They're fusing and using synchros as opposed to.
Well, the thing is, like, I don't think it's one or the other. Like, I don't think like, just because we have Ignister Turbo, that means like Norden is useless. I just think like the rank 4 toolbox in general is very, very powerful. Never mind when you throw in one card rank 4s. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but it's space. It's like, okay. So you look at like the Dynastar and Ignister sort of like turbo builds or whatever. You can evidently see that in order for that to be performed consistently, it has to be built that way. It can't like your extra deck. That's 6 cards or 8 cards. When you look at the Draco Slayer engine, it's effectively 8 cards out of your extra deck. It gives you like 7 cards for extra deck monsters to actually be something relevant, or something effective. So like, and given the fact that pendulum decks have to work to put a monster in the grave, it really doesn't make it a very viable choice.
Yeah. Well, it's all very bleak then. Everything sucks. Banlist probably can't fix anything. No good decks are coming out.
I just think they need to, like, as much as it's probably something along the same lines of what I've said before, they just need to like focus the meta as opposed to like trying to diversify it. Because in this attempt to diversify the format, they've really just given us 3 decks that are just crap, and then crap against each other, and then crap against themselves. So like, I would rather play. I would gladly just have like a format of 1 or 2 decks. So like pendulums and like Cosmo, if it came to it again.
I don't know. I think like they're not very good decks that should be in the same format, because like Draco Pals do some of the most unfair things like ever. Like still to this day, despite like all the brokenness and stuff that's been toned down. Like some of the boards that you can make with Draco Pals going first is absolutely insane. But like the best play that Cosmo do is like, you know, setting traps like turn 1. Do you know what I mean? So it's like they're very different like power levels, I would argue. Like Cosmo's like a really terrible deck that way. I think I might just be biased because I hate that deck, but it's like, well, what we need perhaps is like decks of an equal power level, really.
I mean, when we look at like the Necros format, it's the only real format I can relate to because it's the only format I played avidly. You could see that like there was only really like, well, Necros was the best deck. It was the most powerful deck, but like because it was so powerful, it resulted in like other decks having to main deck hate for it, and it effectively allowed other decks to contend. So I actually don't know where I'm going with this. Actually, I guess as long, yeah. I mean, I've actually just lost my train of thought, so ignore me.
So let's see. So domain giving monarchs a fighting chance is bad, yet all these other decks people love do almost the same thing when you think about it. The game has become lock your opponent out of the game. That's literally the only way you can play now. Well, I disagree with that because monarchs lock you out in a different way, whereas Draco Pals lock you out in a way where they say like, okay, try beat this board. It's not the same thing as, you know, you physically cannot play your deck.
Were you meaning like Necros were dominant enough that you could play anti-Necros stuff and then compete, whereas just now there's not?
No, you couldn't.
I
No, you
think it's
couldn't.
dominant enough.
I disagree with that. You couldn't.
I think my point was just that when you it was similar. It was something similar to what we had with the Pepe Cosmo sort of format, where like I guess the only real way that Cosmo could contend against something like Pepe back then was to main deck stuff like anti-spell, in addition to like, you know, numerous traps and Dark Destroyer being untargetable, etc. You know, it was like all these things that work in the same vein as like main decking a Majesty's Fiend or an anti-spell or Mistake in Necros format. I don't know why I would want that again, because I hated that about Necros format actually. I hate floodgates. I just want a format. Yeah. I just hate. I would just like a format where like I would like it. I would like my ideal format would be Necros format where there's no floodgates, and where the mirror match of the best deck is somewhat skilled, just skilled. But as long as there's cards like Wavering Eyes, we won't have that.
Like I'm just gonna like I know you guys complain about wavering so much, but I honestly like at the current stage I honestly don't think it's that bad because of the fact that the deck is now becoming extremely dragon related. So you're going to be making Draco, the purple dragon dude. You're going to be making that all the time. So that's going to protect your scales, and you can pop your own scales with wizard to give yourself a follow up for the next turn. So yeah, while it can be a blowout, I feel like, you know, there are ways to play around wavering, and it's
Nadia, were you not watching?
I heard there was ways to play around wavering.
Hang on one second, one time. Jack, go ahead first.
Were you not watching the game you just had and you just outright lost to a Wavering Eyes?
Yeah, I know, but like it's, I mean,
there's no skill in that. Like that mirror match would be so much better without that card.
Popping your scales wizard doesn't play around the
As long
wavering.
as it's a fake.
how does it not play around the wavering, Duncan?
Because next turn you have to activate new skills and they're just wavering you then.
Yeah, like as long as pendulums are a thing, Wavering Eyes is going to be a card that is too good. And pendulums are going to be a thing for the foreseeable future, so I think it has to go.
Yeah.
It is good, don't get me wrong, but it's like I feel like we kind of I don't know.
So
I guess you're right.
Okay, so the only way to really play around it is to main deck. So you can main deck Archfiend Eccentric, which is one way to mitigate that. That's why people are playing 2 copies of it. In addition to outing stuff like Domain, Archfiend Eccentric has become a necessity to out stuff like that. You know, back row or Wavering Eyes or Domain. But the other thing that, you know, you've got to ask yourself is, like, you talk about how you can summon Dynaster to protect your scales, or you can like pop your scales or Pendulum Sorcerer. Imagine if you're going second and you're on the back end of a Wavering Eyes. Then how can you make these plays without scales? You have to hope that you have to hope that you have your own Wavering Eyes just to counteract it.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I mean, every format's gonna have its bad cards, I guess. So that's fair enough. Okay, sure.
Was that 3?
I don't think Wavering Eyes is that bad. I agree with you, Nadir.
Yeah.
Well, it's just a blowout. Like, it doesn't involve skill. It just involves how well you draw. Like, that's all that matters. Like, I think if they made a new Wavering Eyes that said, like, destroy both of your own scales and then add a pendulum to your hand, like, it would be a combo piece. That would be fine. But the fact that it blows out, like, all 4 scales or all 3 scales and it does more stuff, that's the important part. That's the part that I don't think is very good for the game.
Oh.
Yeah, like that's the other thing I really do not like about this format, is because of the like dampened consistency of the pendulum deck. Wavering Eyes has become way more essential as a combo piece now. So it operates in the same vein. You're not just you have to ideally use it as a combo piece to like fill your extra deck and then get to your better cards like Monkey Board. And if you don't have that, then you're kind of like playing with just like 5 cards going first. Stuff like a hand of like Master Pendulum and Silver Claw, which are like a 3 and a 5 scale, but like that still only just leaves you with 3 cards. Whereas Wavering Eyes like gives you more options. So yeah, if they did something in the same vein as Wavering Eyes, but just not as much of a blowout, then I'd be all for it.
Yeah, I guess you guys are right. Is there anything else you guys want to touch upon or mention before we? I guess there's not really much to say other than this format kind of sucks. Is there anything important you guys want to focus on more?
Just hope
Bring
that
back
the
Cyberjar.
list is better.
Go ahead, Tom.
Bring back Cyberjar.
Okay. Anything else, Jerry?
I already mentioned all the stuff like Dark Destroyer, Wavering, Domain, but like just make a good list, and I think everything will be fixed.
Make a good list.
No, I don't think it's happening. Like I really don't think it'll happen. But if they make a good list, things will be better.
Yeah, potentially. All right, YouTube, you've heard it here first. Thanks for tuning in, everyone, and shall see you next time. So back to the stream.